So my name is Daria, and I'm the product manager at Huddle01. So today I'll just talk about what Huddle01's journey has been in the past 1 year, which is basically like last FILBangalore to this FILBangalore. What are the primary decisions that we made, why we made those decisions, and then what's the impact that this has had on our whole ecosystem. But before that, let me just give you some context. I think you must have seen this slide multiple times by now. But in very simple terms, Huddle01 basically caters to all your real-time communication needs. Now, when I say real-time communication needs, this can differ based on who you are, right? So for 90% of the people, real-time communication needs are simple. You value connections. You just want to be able to connect with your friends or your family or your colleagues over a simple application, right? And then this is what we do through the first layer, which is the platform layer. So we have a web app, we have a mobile app with two modes. We have the video meeting mode, we have the audio spaces mode. And then this kind of lets you, that kind of caters to the real-time communication need of 90% of the population through the first layer, which is the platform layer. Now the second layer is the infrastructure layer. This primarily caters to the builders. So these are the kind of people, most of you here might be builders, who actually want to build applications that kind of facilitate real-time communication for others. Right? So this is catered by our second layer, which is the infrastructure. The platform itself is built on top of the infrastructure, and we kind of provide to this community primarily through the SDKs. Finally, the third layer is the protocol layer. And this is where things get interesting, because this is where we are kind of spearheading a revolution. We are moving from a completely centralized server-based architecture to a completely decentralized node-to-node architecture. So that's the preview, that's just an overview. I thought, for those of you who don't have an idea, this is just to give you some context on what we do here. But this is not what I'm going to talk about. I'm just going to talk about, the changes that we brought about in the past 1 year in Huddle01. So first, this is how I'm going to structure my speech. First, I'll just talk about the main pain points that we identified 1 year back. This was around last FILBangalore time. So we already had a stable product. We did video meetings. We had the infrastructure as well. But there were few critical issues that we had to fix. So I'll talk about what these pain points were that we identified, how we kind of resolved or tackled them, and then what is the impact that this has had on our ecosystem, and then finally just give you an overview of what our future roadmap looks like. So these are the 4 critical pain points that we identified. As I mentioned, we had a really stable platform. We also had a stable infrastructure. But the first pain point that we found out was that it was working really well when you had a meeting where everyone joined from a single location. So if we had a meeting where everyone joined from India, things were working really seamlessly, no issues so far. But once you had a call in which, say, few people joined from the US, few from India, and few from Europe, then things became a little complicated, right? This platform wasn't really stable. People face high latency. Latency is basically the delay in which you actually hear the other participants, right? So then there was high latency. The call quality wasn't great. So this was the first issue. Our platform and our infrastructure wasn't optimized for global use. Second thing is that while we could comfortably host calls up to 100, 200 peers, once we kind of reached, say, a 500, 600 mark, then the platform wasn't really stable, or the infrastructure. When I say platform, I just mean infrastructure, because our platform is kind of built on top of the infrastructure. So any kind of issues or any features that we have on our platform are a direct it just reflects what we have on our infrastructure. The third was that, for people who face network connectivity issues, there were some issues, so we had to address that as well. And finally, whenever we kind of pushed new updates, the ongoing meetings were affected. So these were the 4 critical pain points, and we knew that these required some major changes, right? These were not minor things you need some features, but these were things that kind of challenged us on an architectural level. So to address this, we came up with an infrastructure revamp. Right, so we actually developed a 5-month-long project that ensured that we kind of updated our backend infrastructure in such a way that it addressed all the key issues and then kind of helped us be a more distributed system. So this is what the infrastructure looks like. Yesterday, we had a talk with Balaz, who explained in detail about WebRTC, the signaling part, the media server part, and all of that. So I'll not get into the details. But in a very high level, basically, we have the Huddle01 clients. And then we have the orchestrator. So orchestrator is the signaling part. And what it basically does is it handles all the persistent connections, the room logic, and all of that. And then we have the media part. And the media part, essentially, their only job is to ensure that, if you have 5 people in a video meeting, then you send your video streams. Everyone else should be able to receive your video streams, and same with audio. And this should happen with all the other participants. So very simple. Media just takes care of all the media stream logic, and then the orchestrator takes care of room logic. And these are the 2 critical components in the whole infrastructure. Now, what are the specific changes that we did in our architecture to address the pain point specifically? So first pain point that I mentioned was this, that the platform wasn't optimized for global use. So I'll just tell you what used to happen before. So suppose we had a call with, say, like 10 people, right? And then 5 joined from India, 5 joined from the US. Previously, our architecture was in such a way that the media part that I just spoke about, where you basically so in the media part, what basically happens is that everyone sends their streams to this media server, and then it forwards it to the other participants in the meeting. So previously, what we did was that we placed this media server. We used to allocate 1 media server for 1 single meeting. Right? Now, the problem with this is when you have people joining from, say, India and from the US, where do you place it? Like, do you place it in India? Do you place it in the US? Or do you place it somewhere in between? This becomes an issue, right? Because the experience gets compromised for any one of them. So here, as you can see, this is where the media server was placed. Like, it's placed in the US. So for people from US, it's very convenient. They just need to send it like right across. It's very close. But for people from India, they had to send it all the way across to US. And this meant that it had to travel all the way from India to US, which meant higher latency. It meant higher bandwidth because, of course, you had to take all the effort to actually move all this distance. And then subpar call quality as well because, of course, there's a lot of packet loss and all that can happen in the way. So this is why we actually had this pain point where, people were not, the platform wasn't optimal for when people joined from multiple locations. To fix this, we did something called media server cascading. This is basically the kind of revamp that we did. Here, primarily what we did is we moved away from allocating 1 single media server to just a meeting. Instead, what we did is that we kind of allocated media servers based on the geographical location of the participant. This meant that if you're joining from the US, you're going to connect to a server that's closest to you. If you're joining from India, you're going to connect to a server that's closest to you. And then if you're joining from Europe, you're going to just connect. So at the end of the day, you're just going to connect to a server that's closest to you, and then the servers are going to talk to each other instead of actually, just allocating 1 particular media layer for a particular meeting. Now, what did this lead to? This meant that people from India now no longer had to send it all the way across to US. They just had to send it to India, which meant much lower latency, much lower bandwidth, and much better quality. Now, when I say quality, this is the scale that I'm talking about. There was a 90% reduction in the latency. As you can see in the US, it actually came down from 235 ms to 32 ms with this cascading implementation. And then in the UK, it came down from 212 to 30 ms. So this was one of the major changes that we did over the course of 1 year in the backend project that I spoke about. When you cross, say, 500 or 600 people, then we had glitches on the platform. And second thing is that the platform wasn't optimized for people who had poor network connections, right? So both of these were fixed with one major change, which is that we got rid of our previous socket implementation and we wrote our own custom socket implementation from scratch. And this brought about a huge improvement. The message throughput was 10 times better, which meant that we could now scale to 1,000 participants in a video meeting. This is a load testing that we did, and this is kind of a testament that we can now scale comfortably to around 1,000 participants in a video meeting, and we're looking at much, much larger scale when it comes to audio spaces as well. And this also handled the reconnection perfectly well. So now the system is designed in such a way that it works really well even in the poorest of network conditions. So then that issue is also handled. So that pain point was also handled. Finally, we had the last pain point, which is that whenever we had bug fixes or features that were pushed, then the ongoing meeting was affected because we had to kind of ensure that we reset the system a little bit. Now we have kind of come up with we've kind of redefined the deployment strategy in such a way that there's 0 downtime, right? So now, if you push a new update, the people who are in meeting at that time are not going to get affected. They're just going to continue with the meeting. And then once they're done with the meeting, and then the next time they join a call, they'll be able to see all the new updates and new bug fixes and all of that. Right. So this is basically how we kind of addressed all the pain points through the backend infrastructure. Now, this backend infrastructure also led to a lot of improvements. First is that the mobile app performance has improved considerably. We have made our systems much more secure. And then finally, the SDK that has been built on top of this new infrastructure is much more modular, which means that now you can have a lot of add-on services to the SDK. It's no longer restricted to just audio, video. You can have a recording service. You can have a token gating service. You can have something like a live streaming service, right? So these were the improvements that we did. Yes, so this was our plan. Like over the course of 1 year, we decided that we're going to take a few pain points, identify the critical pain points, and ensure that these get addressed. But at the end of the day, that still, just doing that wouldn't matter because you also need to give something extra for the clients, right? Because at the end of the day, we are building a product, we are building an infrastructure, and we want to be able to give like new features, something new that the people can use. So over the course of 1 year, we also did a lot of feature upgrades on the platform and on the infrastructure level. These are just a few notable ones that I've added. We have much more. As you can see here, we have the customizable iframes. So iframe integration is like the easiest way to integrate our SDK into your system. It takes less than 1 minute, and now it's customizable as well. You can change the background color, you can change the logo, you can add your title, and then you already have like a video solution ready to go. We actually introduced a GCal add-on because scheduling was one of the main challenges we had on our ecosystem, right? We couldn't schedule easily like calls on Huddle01. So now you can do it very easily. You just need to download the GCal add-on and then just select the Huddle01 meeting and then get started. We have the recording service. We launched the audio spaces, which was the biggest launch of this year, right? So now it's not, your platform is not just restricted to just group calls. You can even host like full-fledged events on the platform using the audio spaces. And then finally, our SDKs were previously, like 1 year back when I spoke about, like say 1 year back during the Filecoin time, our SDKs primarily supported just the React framework, and which was a web-based framework. But now we have extended to support to Vanilla.js. We also support mobile-based frameworks such as React Native, Flutter, and we are soon bringing in support for Unity, native iOS, native Android, and all of that. Yeah. In addition, we also did a lot of product integrations because we wanted to expand the ecosystem. This was primarily done through wallet integrations, and we have the Wischain wallet, we have the OKX wallet, we have Arbitrum, we have WNS support. And all of these integrations were done to ensure that our ecosystem also grows, and then it's much more like, as an overall ecosystem, we like grow to a much beyond level. So these were the primary changes that we did over the course of 1 year. Now, we say that this is how we kind of address the issues and we brought in new features, but what was the impact? At the end of the day, did it make any difference? Looks like it did. So last year, which is around like Jan 2023, so last year we had the first graph actually shows the number of unique wallet users that we had. So we had 3,000 unique wallet users last year, and now we have 10,000. So it's a 3-time increase in the number of wallet users. Second is the number of meetings that we did were 30,000 last year. Now it's 80,000. And then the user minutes on our platform were 800,000 last year, and now it's a whopping 2.8 million minutes. Right? So that's the amount of growth that we saw in the past 1 year. And this is not just limited to metrics. As you can see, now we have a user base from across the globe. Like we have implemented cascading, we have made it much more global, and now we have users from across 140 countries who are actually using the platform. And we have a lot of like great clients as well. We have Lens Protocol, we have Solana, we have Groovy, we have Kermi, we have Hey, we have Butterfly, all of them who are building on top of us. And we've also re-architected our SDK in such a way that it caters to multiple industries. So if you're from telehealth, if you're from social, if you're from education, you can use our SDKs to build specifically to your use case. And this is an example that these are some of the applications that are built on top of our SDK. We currently stand at 200 plus applications, and few of these are very innovative ones. Here you can see a collaborative whiteboard. You can see a coding tool. You can see, you can maybe like build applications like proximity-based audio, video, chat, and actually embed it into a game. So the limits are kind of endless. You can be as ambitious as you want with regards to what you want to build using our SDK. So with this, I've kind of like talked about where we are, what we have built over the course of 1 year, and we have primarily moved to a completely global distributed system. What is the next step? The next step is to kind of move from a globally distributed system to a decentralized system. So the primary difference here is that now you're just going to relinquish all the control. So whatever I spoke about, you have the signaling part, you have the media part, all of this is now going to be powered by people and any of you. right? And how would we do this? You basically take the signaling part, you take the media part. I'm just going to embed it into something called a Huddle01 node. And then any one of you can actually like decide to become a node operator, and you would essentially be just running this node. And at the end of the day, what you would be doing is powering calls or fueling calls in our ecosystem. Now, what does this mean in terms of performance? So now suppose I'm a user who's based in Bangalore. Previously, my calls were powered through, say, a server in Delhi or a server in, say, Bombay. But now, once we have this completely decentralized system, if I'm a user in Bangalore, my calls might even be powered by my neighbor who's actually acting as a node operator in Bangalore. And this is directly going to like reduce the latency, improve the performance, improve the overall call quality, and then also build a system which is completely powered by people. So this is the vision we are moving towards. And of course, the Huddle01 node operators are going to get rewarded for it. But I'm not going to talk more about that because now I'd like to invite Shruti, who will talk in detail about this decentralized RTC network, the reward system, and the crypto economics aspect of it. Thank you.